Welcome to Commander Central, episode 158. And today we're going to take a look at listener Glenn Runyon's Animar Eldrazi Pops list. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
And as Glenn says, it's part of a balanced facepalm.
Ooh.
How's it going, guys?
I'm ready to look at this list.
I'm back for a second show, and hopefully it'll be another 150 episodes until I miss 2 in a row again. So, but I think at this point, so Chris has missed a couple. I've missed, I think, 3.
You've missed 3. I've missed half.
You've missed half of one. Max has the attendance record.
When did he miss one?
I left halfway through a show because I had to go to a member initiation at the Elks Lodge one night.
We threw him off, remember?
Yeah. You fired me.
I remember as soon as he left, we were just throwing him under the bus.
Yeah,
We just got rid of him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay,
I live
remember
here,
that
but
now.
that's fine.
I still have a key.
You do.
I didn't have to use it today, though.
I hope I beat you here. I was the first one here today. That never
nice.
happens on a Thursday.
Yeah, not usually. Well played,
I'm
Max.
sitting there like, I know Chris said he was still prepping.
I was watching The Masked Singer is what I was doing
Exactly.
at the time, and I'm like, oh no, I have to leave.
It's a catchy show.
I was actually home. I worked from home today. My kid had a orthodontist appointment at 11. So I took him in, and because he's cycling up to have to get braces, somehow there was a miscommunication that the braces went on today.
Oh, no.
And he didn't know it, and his mom didn't know it, and I didn't know it until we get there. And the orthodontist is like, okay, you ready for this? Ready to get some braces on? And he's like, no. It's like, well, they're going on today.
Oh.
So he got his braces on today with the wires and everything, and he's a little bit stressed out. I'm like, tell you what, buddy, you can have the rest of the afternoon off. You can stay home from school for the afternoon and just hang out. So we hung out this afternoon and watched a couple of Arrested Development on Hulu, and then he played video games, and so he got a pretty chill afternoon. So yeah, he's got the full face full of metal now.
Talk about a sneak attack. You don't even get one last night to eat like popcorn and gum and sticky candies and all the stuff you're not supposed to eat.
The new braces, you are allowed to chew gum and other stuff now.
Gum
but it has to be like sugar-free and...
The big ones were Jolly Rancher candies because they're so tacky, and things like butterscotch and
Milk Duds.
And it's almost no stuff that he
eats
anyway. So, and actually, after all was said and done, he wasn't terribly upset, but he wasn't ready for it. He didn't like that part.
Ouch.
He wasn't prepped. So
if I ever got braces, I just walk around the house and be like, Frankenstein.
Get one of those giant industrial construction worker magnets and be like, let's go, Chris. Let's see if we can lift you up with this.
Has Connor so far avoided having to deal with any of that?
He has he had a really bad tooth infection when he was younger that we had to pull it out. Well, as his teeth grew in, he had to have like a
spacer?
Yes, a spacer.
Okay, all right, sure.
So other than that, we've avoided a majority of that.
Nice. Yeah. As a kid, I had braces, and it wasn't a lot of fun. Max, I'm assuming you did too?
Not fun.
Chris?
Nope.
Never? Oh, nice.
Nope.
So no one made fun of you. You made fun of Max and I, though.
Nope. Actually, I didn't pick on anybody when I was growing up in high school. Just my brothers.
Because they would fight then. They could actually throw punches at you.
Oh, anyone could throw punches back when we were growing up. What are you talking about?
That's true. Yeah.
Today, I look funny at someone, and I got worried the cops are going to show up at my house.
And on to a deck tech.
Well, if you would like to get a deck tech done, how would you reach out to us and get that arranged, Max?
Head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central and check out our reward tiers. If you are so inclined to support us financially, you could get one of these Decks You Play episodes. You could guest on our show, or you could just get access to our chat room and talk to us and the other couple hundred people in there.
Yeah, it's relatively busy. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah.
All I know is I get tagged in it, and it's like, you have a new message, and I look, and it's like, missed 170 messages. I'm like, we're just going to clear it. I'm not even going to look. This is going to take me too long to find it. So if anyone ever wants to talk to me, send me a personal message, because then I'll see it right away and know where it is, and I can read what you had to say.
Well, I actually wound up changing my Twitter picture in Chicago.
You did?
So people actually would know what I look like. Which is something I should have done years ago. I don't know why I didn't. But the amount of people that recognized me from my voice when I was talking, and they'd be like, "Are you Dana from Idiot Trackcast or Commander Central?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Man, I can just tell from you." I'm like, my voice does not seem that distinct to me. But, I mean, I guess if you hear me talking on a podcast often enough, it does get distinct, so.
I'm waiting for that day here in town where I'm like out at the grocery store, like sitting at the bar, and I start talking, and someone leans over and is like, "You sound like this dude I listen to on a podcast." I'm like, "Sure."
I just say nope. I don't know what you're talking about.
And then they go, "What's that tattoo on your arm?" "Oh, yeah, so you do listen to us."
Well, my favorite one, somebody in Vegas made the comment, when we met, we were playing a game. They're like, "Oh, based on your voice, for some reason, I thought you would look like John Hamm." And I'm like, "I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Thank you for the compliment.
I too am let down that I don't look like John Hamm. That would be pretty sweet, but I don't. No." So yeah, that was just a random comment. I remember getting that one in Vegas. Like even a vendor, I was actually looking at cards, and some vendor said, "Are you on some podcast?" Because I recognize your voice. It's like, "Yeah, I am." So yeah, the power of voice recognition, I guess. So my Twitter picture is now a picture of me that I quickly snapped at Magic Fest Chicago so people could figure out who I was.
And then John Dunning made you into the ultimate boss fight.
Yes, he did. And then I think Raph made me into something. He made me into a card too or something. He took the picture and put it on Mercadia's Downfall, I think.
Yep.
Since it does damage or buffs your creatures based on the number of non-basic lands an opponent controls.
So for Dana, that's all his lands.
That's all my lands, yeah. I did get hit with a Ruination that destroys all non-basics.
Yes.
And it was, I just happened to have enough basicals that it didn't really do that much damage in Chicago. I did, however, have someone drop I think it was a turn 3 Void Winnower.
Oh, no.
Oh, that is tough to fight through. And the deck didn't even kick off that much. The other deck, it was just like no one could draw. No one drew the answer. We all had like the 2 CMC or 4 CMC spells, and no one hit anything. So
that's one of those hands you just open up. You're like, "Oh yeah, I can do this," and then I'm going to do nothing else. And hopefully, my opponents don't do anything neither.
Hopefully, they do even less. Yeah, that's how that broke down. Actually, Void Winnower is not like a fun card to play against, but I don't think it's. Usually, you can find an answer to it.
Yeah, it's not backbreaking.
Yeah, I mean it's not great. Don't get me wrong, particularly on turn 3, but you can survive it. I think
for sure.
So speaking of annoying Eldrazi, I think we're looking at an Eldrazi deck here today, and it is a Animar Eldrazi deck, which is a pretty strange thing to actually see. I can't say that I've ever seen that before, although I guess I've seen Eldrazi like morphs and colorless stuff before, but this is Eldrazi Animar.
Yeah, most times you see Animar, it's combo.
Yeah, and there's that here as well. So Glenn says his meta ranges in all directions, as there are quite a few LGSs in Syracuse, New York. He doesn't have dedicated play groups. So when he's able to travel, he goes to an LGS for Commander Leagues. The power level will be in the 7 to 9 range. He has not seen any land hate yet, so greedy mana bases are a go. Hey, I hear you, bud. But there's no remorse to play in Armageddon, so if it does happen, you just have to eat it, and that is what it is. There's plenty of graveyard shenanigans, so he's running to watch out for that. The goal of the deck is to instill the horrors of the blind eternities into my opponents. Eldrazi are his favorite creature type, which Chris can appreciate. And after a bit of trial and error, Animar was chosen to be corrupted. True to Animar's nature, this is a combo deck working towards infinite Eldrazi bounces with Cloudstone Curio to exile the table in the best case scenario. Alternatively, creature combat with massive Eldrazi keeps the table on their toes. Overall, he wants this to be his high-powered deck.
For weaknesses, a well-timed board wipe can be crippling, and anybody running sacrifice effects can be hazardous. Overall, I feel it's missing something in the early game as I look to set up or defend my board. Additionally, if there's any other bounce tech like Cloudstone Courier that he may have missed, he'll happily let us recommend it. And then there are any other mechanics or tactics you think would synergize well with this build.
With the budget, there really aren't any restrictions other than time. Good man, I like that. If it's a card that he really wants, he will save up and go grab it at some point.
Sure.
And he also has to say that, Dana, you recommended a card called Cream of the Crop.
Yeah.
And he tried it. unfortunately, it didn't pay out. Ideally, since he would see a lot of non-creature cards that he wanted, and then they'd end up getting put on the bottom of the library.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, I think in a combo deck where you have a bunch of pieces that you want to find, that makes sense. That I can see how that wouldn't be useful. It's more of a card where you're just trying to find bulk value, and this probably isn't the deck for it. That makes sense. All right. Let's take a look at his Animar list here. We're looking at Architect. We'll put the link out there when the show goes live. First of all, 35 lands in it. Well, first of all, let's read Animar. Max, you want to tell us what he says for those of you who do not know?
Yeah, Animar.
Cheater card.
Cheater card. That's right.
Animar is a 1/1 for Teamer, so that's blue, red, and green. He has protection from white and from black. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Animar Soul of Elements. And then creature spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on Animar.
So Animar always does totally fair things and never at all doing anything busted.
Animar would be a totally fair card if it didn't have the pro-white,
The
pro-black.
pro-white and pro-black are what
Yes.
put it over the top in Commander. Absolutely. The fact that it dodges 9 out of 10 removal spells is a really big deal. So that's where things get out of control. You're absolutely right. Let's glance at the land base here. Like I said, he's not running a ton of basics, but actually it's not necessarily even that bad. There's 4 forests, there's 5 islands, and there's only 1 mountain, so I guess it's 10. Yeah, I mean, that's not ideal. And you are going to get buzzsawed by a blood moon or something along those lines. But if you're not getting punished for it, I mean, why not?
Right.
So there's no ABUR duels, but there are shock lands. There are things like Cavern of Souls, the Eldrazi lands, Eldrazi Temple, Eye of Ugin. Some of the good Tudor lands. There's Ash Barrens. There's Fabled Passage. Tri-lands, Exotic Orchard kind of effects. It's a pretty good land base. What do you guys think?
There are only 35 of them.
Only 35.
I do realize that Animar reduces the cost of stuff.
Yeah.
But as you said in the original portion of things you wanted to fix, so if you get board wiped or things are forced to sack off, you don't actually have the lands to play the cards out of your hand. You're relying too much on Animar.
Yeah, I can see that. I also think, again, if he's running this as a toon deck, there's nothing wrong with things like Frontier Bivouac, which is the Jeskai land, or excuse me, the Teamer land, but it does come into play tapped. And I think if you are playing this kind of deck, you don't want your lands to come into play tapped unless they're amazing and doing something crazy, which this is not. I would just run a City of Brass there. Or, I guess Mana Confluence was one we recommended, which is like $20 now because of Frontier. But City of Brass is still like $6. I would run City of Brass. I think Max is looking up Mana Confluence right now to confirm that, but it's
It's closer to 30.
oh, jeez.
$28 according to Scryfall.
Wow.
I'm glad I picked those up quite a while ago for Dredge and Modern.
I like the expedition I have just went through the roof too.
So at the very least, I would run City of Brass over over that, because in this deck at that power level, the life loss, you're generally losing to you're not losing to chip damage, you're losing to a combo or someone's big overrun effect with a Crater Hoof or something. Like losing 4 damage with City of Brass over the course of a game is just not going to matter.
Yes.
Whereas the land coming into play tapped might. So. What do you guys think of Academy Ruins? Is there enough stuff he's recurring here? Or is there a combo I wasn't really aware of? Or is that just a way to bring back if somebody blows up one of the bounce artifacts or something? If someone like blows up Ancestral Statue, or I guess that's the main one, also in Curio.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's probably why.
Okay.
Some sort of recursion, so you can always be able to get that engine online.
And I have put Hall of Heliod's Generosity in my Sphinx deck, mostly just to grab True Conviction back. But I mean, I'll reuse Rhystic Study or Mystic Remora too. But like, I get it. There's not a lot of downside to it, other than it's a 3-color deck and it's a colorless land. But you're probably okay.
Yeah. I mean, it also brings back key pieces like the Lightning Greaves.
True.
Protection for Animar.
Sure.
The more you might need.
There are no land removal lands in here. There's no strip mine. There's no wasteland. There's no ghost quarter, tectonic edge, field of ruin.
I do like that because it's a 3-color deck, and you're focused more on getting Animar out and doing your shenanigans with Animar instead of having those lands, which is going to hurt with the 3 different colors.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, a lot of the Eldrazi, they can exile permanents when they come into play.
That's true.
Or the Annihilator clauses, so you have backup ways to get rid of those problem lands.
Sure.
If you are so inclined and need to do that.
Okay, I buy that.
The one that I would put in here is our favorite. I don't remember the name of it because I'm totally brain farting today, but the Destroy All Graveyards.
Scavenger Grounds.
Yes.
It is in here.
It is.
Yes.
Yes, it
I
is.
scrolled right by it.
Yep.
Yep, there it is. See, that's why I don't like Architect. When I move my mouse, things go everywhere.
What was the sound again? Yeah, Scavenger Grounds is in here, and I honestly at this point I don't run. I have it in every one of my decks, and I have a tough time. I would have a tough time not recommending it in every deck I look at.
I think it's in 3 of my 4.
Okay.
I don't play it at all.
You don't have any in your decks, Chris?
No.
Really? Why is that?
Because most of my decks play with the graveyard.
Yeah, but sometimes you still
I
got
played in one deck. I played in my mill deck.
I don't play it in Brago because I'm pretty reliant on the graveyard.
Sure,
For
sure.
that instance.
Okay. Keswick Wolf Run, nice backup win condition here. We did mention Scavenger Grounds. One card I like actually in this deck quite a bit, and I think is kind of underplayed in general, is Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. There's not much downside to it. It always taps for 1, and you can add 2 to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast colorless spells, and only if you control 7 or more lands. I guess the downside here is it's a colorless land in a deck that wants 3 colors, but there's a lot of colorless spells here, and by the time you get to 7, it winds up being another Ancient Tomb that doesn't hurt you, and it lacks that Temple of the False God thing where it can burn you early on. I mean, I guess it can burn you if you're trying to cast Animar and you only have 2 colors, but it's still going to tap for mana for other spells. So it's a card I like a lot.
And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your guys' opinion. Thoughts on the Urza lands being in this deck?
I don't know if I've ever seen someone successfully get out all 3 Urza's lands in Commander
Without it being a true colorless deck.
but even then, I just feel like
Yeah, it's hard.
the amount of resources you have to devote to making that happen. I guess maybe in this kind of deck you could run something like, is it Traverse the Outlands, where you can go get
You're thinking of Hour of Promise.
Hour of Promise, where you can go get 2 lands.
2 lands, they come in tapped. Yep.
But even then, it's only getting you 2 of the 3.
Right.
So you have to hope you draw the other one or already have it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's worth the hoops you have to jump through for the most part.
Okay.
If I was going to play a colorless land, it would be Field of the Dead.
Particularly in this, yeah, I mean, that's a good point here. And then swap out, one of your basics for a snow basic just to get you even more diversity.
Yep.
In a 3-color deck, Field of the Dead's, yeah, I'm with you there.
It'll just keep triggering. It helps you in the long run. I mean, especially if they start board wiping you or having sack outlets out,
Yeah.
like he was saying. It's just like, play a land, make a zombie. Okay, you want me to sack something? I'll sack that zombie off.
Yep, not much downside.
I mean, even going that far, if we're going to put Field of the Dead in and put a Snowland in, put a Waste in.
Yeah,
It creates true colorless mana for the few Eldrazi in this deck
They care about
need
colorless mana.
the colorless mana.
Yep. And it'll prevent the Blood Moon or Back to Basics lot because you do have a colorless basic.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. All
That
right.
would definitely be my first tutor if someone paths something of mine and be like, Basic Land, where are you?
Waste.
All right, where should we go to next?
How about over to the Planeswalkers?
That will work.
And by walkers, I mean Walker.
Right, there is just the one.
It's Ugin the Ineffable. So for more of the Spark for 6 generic mana, creature spells he casts cost 2 less, so that's another
Colorless.
reducer.
Yep.
Any colorless spell.
Oh, look at that. Colorless spells. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Aw, teamwork.
You should just know Ugin.
No,
'Cause Eugene's my homie.
I like the other one.
The other one's trash compared to this one. This one's just like gas and
It is
Commander.
gas.
The other one, I think it's good, but I think this one's much better.
And then for his +1 is exile the top card of your library face down, and you can look at it, create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token, and then when that token leaves the battlefield, put that exile card into your hand. And the -3 is destroy target permanent that's one or more colors. You can destroy your own Animar.
Yeah.
Totally can. Or your opponent's Animar that they play.
Yeah, mirror match.
Yeah, Ugin is just generally really, really solid in a deck where you can reduce your mana cost by 2 on colorless spells. And it's not just artifacts.
Nope.
Because it makes a difference for all these Eldrazi as well. I would be better off running it in my Vela deck as well with the colorless stuff, except for I'm limiting to Tezzerets, but Ugin's really, really good. Let's take a look at the artifacts since we just mentioned that. There are 11 in this deck, mostly mana rocks and a couple of bounce things. You have Arcane Signet, Chromatic Lantern, Cloudstone Curio for the infinite bounce shenanigans, Herald's Horn, Lightning Greaves, Mystic Forge, and Sensei's Divining Top, which is a little combo action there. Soul Ring, Talisman of Curiosity, Thought Vessel, and Thran Dynamo. So what do you guys think of this mix here?
I think it's fine. I mean, it's everything I would want to see in a deck like this.
I might make Talisman of Curiosity into a Felwar Stone. Felwar Stone's almost always going to make you in a 3-color deck a couple of colors, and there's times it's going to make you all 3 colors, whereas Talisman of Curiosity is just always going to make you 2, and it's going to ding you for 1 as well. I think there's more upside in a Felwar Stone, and there's not much less downside. I think, okay, you got in a game with 3 mono white decks, and it makes you no colors you care about. But, like, how often does that happen?
I hope you win that game.
Right.
The talismans do create colorless mana.
Oh, that's a good point. No,
Yes.
good point.
And they don't hurt you to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And this deck does care about colorless.
Yes, it does.
All right. No,
And then, because then it also gives you the option of the 2 colors.
Yeah.
But the colorless, I think, is the big portion of it.
no, that's a good point. Because there aren't signets in here other than Arcane Signet, which just makes your mana of any color. But there's not the other signets that require you to put mana into them. No, okay. Yeah, I see
like
that.
it.
I like it as
Because
well.
the more and more I look at this is technically a 1-color deck splashing 2 other colors, like barely. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I would change here. Thran Dynamo at 4, but it does make 3, and there's a lot of expensive Eldrazi here, so I get that one as well.
And it comes in untapped.
Comes in untapped, and again, it, like you mentioned with the Talisman, it makes colorless, which is relevant sometimes. So
yeah, Thran Dynamo is always a hard one for me to say to cut. Because yes, there are ones that are, some of them are better, but it's just value for what it is.
yeah, yep. Herald's Horn is a nice card in general. I think this is a really good deck for it, especially because every one of those Eldrazi has, occasionally, like if you pick elves or something, there's enough elves that cost like 1 green, so it doesn't reduce them. Or every one of these Eldrazi has colorless in their cost, so it's always going to be a reducer. So I like that one a lot. Yeah, that's a solid collection of artifacts there. Why don't you read us the sorceries here, Chris?
All right, we have 5 sorceries. We have 1 of Cultivate, 1 of Drawn from Dreams, 1 of Dream Cache, 1 of Increasing Savagery, and 4 of Kodama's Reach.
4 of Kodama's Reach.
Oh, you guys caught me on that. No, that's just a 1 of.
I was wondering where you're going with that. This is why you can't leave us alone, Dana.
Right, I guess, yeah.
You gotta add a little spice sometimes, Mm-hmm. So, we got 2 ramp spells, a couple of card draw spells. I mean, seems pretty legit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one I would recommend, and it plays into the bounce theme, would be Flood of Tears. It's a 6-mana sorcery from M20. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 or more non-token permanents of your own this way, you can put something else. You can put a permanent back onto the battlefield. So you can do the bounce, and then put Animar back down, and maybe have some mana left over to start the process over again.
Sure.
Don't like it.
Because it's 6 mana?
No, because it bounces everything. You don't want to bounce Animar.
True.
You want to bounce your other guys that you can cheat back into play.
I understand that, but there are some other mass bounces in this deck that I'm guessing now you're just going to tell them to cut.
Maybe.
So Dream Cache. Draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on the top of your library or both on the bottom of your library. Is there some specific synergy there with Dream Cache that makes it worth running that I'm not seeing?
I mean, if you have Herald's Horn out, you could put an Eldrazi on top, and then I think it's Herald's Horn.
Redraw it.
Yeah, put it into your hand during the upkeep or whatever. But other than that, I haven't really seen anything.
I think I would rather just do something like chart a course and draw 2 or
Harmonize and
or
draw.
harmonize and spend 1 more and draw 3 and just keep them. Like I'd rather spend a little bit less and get a little bit less, or spend a little bit more and get a little bit more. But I feel like this falls in kind of this weird niche where I don't know if I want to be there.
I'd want to play Dig Through Time, but that's
Right,
not
sure.
sorcery.
Or Treasure Cruise, or like,
Yep.
There's just a couple other things I would think I would rather do here than Dream Cache. There's 11 artifacts in this deck for the same cost. You could run Artificer's Intuition and just draw 2 at instant speed. So unless there's something beneficial to put cards in the top or the bottom, which there's a couple things, I guess, like Mystic Forge, you could cast, put an artifact back on top, or a colorless spell and cast it, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I just don't think it's... That's why I wondered if I was missing something, because I feel like it's just not quite good enough.
No, aside from that, I think that's pretty much the only thing I've seen so far.
Yeah. Increasing Savagery is a card I might as well quick read because you don't see it much. 2 green for sorcery. Put 5 +1 counters on target creature, and if Increasing Savagery was cast from a graveyard, put 10 +1 counters on that creature instead, and it has flashback 7. So, I mean, it's just a way to make Animar even more disgustingly huge.
Mm-hmm.
But does Animar need help doing that in the form of a 4-mana sorcery?
I would rather a 1-mana enchantment like Hardened Scales.
Yeah, I think so. I guess the situation here is you cast Animar on turn 3, you cast Increasing Savagery on turn 4, and put 5 counters on Animar, and then you can start casting a bunch of Eldrazi for free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess that's the thought process. And then later on, maybe you make it 10 counters and have the option. Again, I guess Animar dies, someone has a reality shift in hand, and they can actually kill Animar. And then you recast it, and then you put 10 counters on Animar and go right back to work. So I think that makes sense there. But I do think Hardened Scales makes sense here in general as well. Just gets you there that much faster.
Yeah. Something that would be maybe fun, maybe it wouldn't fit into this more competitive style deck, would be Gruesome Slaughter. Until end of turn, your colorless creatures gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Get some blockers out of the way for Animar to get through for the Alpha Strike.
Yeah. How about the instant speed spells here?
Yeah, we have 13 of them. Arcane Denial, Cyclonic Rift, Evacuation, Heroic Intervention, Mana Drain, Muddle the Mixture, Mystical Tutor, Paradoxical Outcome, Reality Shift, Return of the Wild Speaker, Shared Summons, Swan Song, and Worldly Tutor.
So there's a couple of counter spells, a couple of bounces, a couple of tutors, some interaction in terms of removal. So let's look at the counter spells here quickly. Arcane Denial, Mana Drain, Muddle the Mixture, and Swan Song. And Muddle the Mixture also has the ability to be transmuted to go tutor up something that costs 2, whether that's Rift or
Sylvan Library.
Sylvan Library is a pretty decent target. I think at least one of the bounce things lets you go get it. I don't remember which one. I thought one did. Is it Temur?
Temur Sabertooth.
Which is not in here.
Because it's not an Eldrazi.
Yeah. Although there's a few other non-Eldrazi in here. But
And Temur Sabertooth costs 4, so that's wrong. Its activated ability costs 2.
there we go. All right. So anyway, there's a few things you can go get with that are fairly useful. Anything you would change with that counterspell package? I like Arcane Denial a lot, and it's easy to cast in this kind of deck, only costing a colorless and a blue. Mana Drain is a way to ramp. We mentioned why Muddle is useful, and then Swan Song. I mean, that's probably the counterspell package I would run here as well.
I wouldn't mind seeing a delay in here.
Delay is really, really good.
It's another cheap one. People don't get quite as upset when you cast that spell. I know. Lately, I've been noticing a lot of people get upset when I cast a counterspell, and I only play like 3 or 4 of them at max in a deck.
Sure.
And they aren't the cheap ones either. You're running like Cryptic and Mystic Confluence and
But delay, so pretty much what you're doing is you're looking for cheap counterspells to keep the board wipes off of you. And delay would be another one so you only need 1 blue pip.
And in this deck, if you delay somebody, you probably can kill them before the spell goes off.
Yep, that's the whole point, is you just turn on them and you're like, I'm sorry, man. But
Yeah.
if everybody wants to keep their creatures, kill that player.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if you, I don't even know if I would pull any of these. I might just run it as another counter spell because they're not like it's that deep in terms of counters. But heroic interventions in here to save your stuff. That's really, really solid. Paradoxical outcome. I'm kind of surprised. I guess it's a one use to bounce stuff and replay it. Like, you draw the card and then you play it for free. I guess that's a really good draw spell in this deck.
It is, and then it prevents you from targeting Animar.
Yeah.
True, because you do get to return anything of your choice.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a nice draw spell baked in with protection. Replay Animar, put some counters on him, play the rest of your stuff again for free. Like the dream for this one, I would imagine, is just, attack somebody and do X amount of damage, and then bounce the Eldrazi with Paradoxical Outcome, and then recast them all for free so they come back into play untapped, and you draw, 5 cards in the process.
I mean, it could also be used for, like a tech against, like a board wipe again, because it is instant speed.
Yeah.
So you could just bounce everything back to your hand, then, save everything so you don't have to start over the process of getting more cards to do it.
Yeah.
You have all the cards already.
We've mentioned this card already, but Return of the Wild Speaker is pretty fantastic. In general, Reality Shift is a pretty great removal. There's not a ton of removal in this deck.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at. The things that are going to lock Animar down are like Reality. You're imprisoned in the moons. You're Song of the Dryad.
Dark Sun Mutation.
Well, not that. That's
I guess
white.
it's pro-white, but right. Someone drops a Lignify on Animar, you're in pretty rough shape in this deck. If you can't counter it.
Unless the Animar already has like a bunch of counters on it.
Sure, and you can just swing and then, yeah.
But still, I would like to see 1, maybe 2, like Unravel the Aether or the Glamour, Corrosive Grip, something like that.
Even Beast Within, even.
Yeah.
Just to have that one, oh my god, this will save my butt.
I do like the Deglamour and Unravel because it is another card that is versatile where you can save your Cloudstone Curio if need be.
Yep.
Yes, it does shuffle it back into your deck, but from everything I'm looking at, it's harder to get things out of the graveyard than it would be to get it out of the deck.
Yeah. There are 5 enchantments here. We've got Equilibrium, Mystic Remora, Rhystic Study, Rhythm of the Wild, and the Sylvan Library.
All of them are 100% perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, Equilibrium. This is a pretty great deck for Equilibrium to be in to get your infinite bounce go on Remora's value town all day long. So Rhystic Study. Rhythm of the Wild is, if you're going to run one of those haste enchantments and you've got access to green, I think that's the one you run. Because if you have something else that does haste, it stacks. If you need to put counters on things, it gives Animar a counter right away.
Yep.
I would not mind seeing Hardened Scales in this list. And I'm kind of surprised it isn't in here. I wonder if he didn't run it and it didn't underperform or something.
Very well could be. I'm also wondering maybe he just doesn't have enough creatures with power 4 or greater to run Teamer Ascendancy. It's another haste enabler.
Yeah.
And if you cast a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card.
Yeah, maybe.
You got Kindred Discovery, you got Guardian Project. I mean, all of those are really good as well.
Yeah.
Guardian Project would be really solid here. Tricky if you're doing bounce loops.
Yep.
Yeah, and the way this deck is looking, it's very light on red, so I like the idea of staying towards the blue or the green enchantments.
All right. How about the creatures here?
The most important part of this deck. Next to Animar.
Pretty much. There's 28 of them, which is always fun in a deck that isn't necessarily based around attacking. I mean, you'll attack and you can, but that's not what this deck is doing necessarily. Most important one, number 1 here, maybe, Ancestral Statue.
The I win the game card.
Yeah. For those that don't remember, because it really only sees play in this kind of deck, it's a 3/4 artifact creature golem. When it enters the battlefield, return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, which is pretty often Ancestral Statue.
And then you cast it for
Cast
free.
it again for free off Animar and
Then you bounce an Eldrazi.
put a gazillion counters on Animar and make a gazillion whatever.
Yep.
Draw a gazillion cards if you've decided to run that Guardian Project or something.
There you go.
So good.
And
so
again,
good.
it's probably worth running Academy of Ruins just to bring this back if someone
Yep.
kills it. What else do we have here, Max?
We have Artisan of Kozilek. So when you cast it, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has Annihilator 2. Bane of Balaged, another Eldrazi. When it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents they control. Cloud of Fairies, when it comes into play, untap 2 lands, so just a way to get some infinite mana or maybe that extra push to finish out the game. Conduit of Ruin, when you cast it, you may search your library for a colorless creature card with converted mana cost 7 or greater, and then shuffle your library and put it on top. The first creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less.
So Cloud of Fairies.
Yes.
It does become infinite with Equilibrium.
Yes.
Yeah, because you bounce untap 2.
Yep. Once the counter goes on to Animar, then you can just go infinite with it.
Yep.
We have Deep Fathom Skulker. It's another Eldrazi. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, and then it has 3 generic and a colorless activated ability. That target creature can't be blocked this turn. Another way to just make sure Animar gets through. Drift of Phantasms, a non.
Second copy of Cloudstone Curio.
There we
Basically,
go.
yep.
Defender flying, and you can transmute it. Eldrazi Mimic. There's your whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may change Eldrazi's Mimic's base power and toughness to that creature's power and toughness until end of turn.
Yep.
I'll take another 12/12, please.
Yep.
Yes. Bring it to me.
Endless One. X comes in with X +1/+1 counters on it. That seems to go really good with Animar.
Good way to dump all your infinite mana too as well before you cast it.
Eternal Scourge, 3 generic mana for an Eldrazi Horror. You may cast Eternal Scourge from exile, and then when he becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, exile it. So just another way to keep the counters flowing for Animar. You okay, Chris?
Oh, I hate.
Architect
I'm
moved on you again.
Yes, it did. I'm like going through it with you, and all of a sudden it moved on me again. I'm like, stop.
We have Herald of Kozilek, 1 red and a blue for a 2/4 Eldrazi drone that says colorless spells you cast cost 1 less. We have Kozilek's Channeler. It's a mana dork that adds 2 generic to your pool. Kozilek Butcher of Truth, the original
Eldrazi
Titan. Matter Reshaper. When it dies, reveal the top card of your library. You may put that card onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less. Otherwise, put that card into your hand.
So pretty much you get the top card of your library no matter what.
Yes. Maul Drifter, just a way to draw cards.
And it's a pretty good ETB thing to loop as well to draw
Yes.
all the stuff.
Oblivion Sower, when you cast it, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of his or her library, then you may put any number of land cards that player owns from exile onto the battlefield under your control.
Another good reason to maybe run Scavenger Grounds to blow out some of those graveyards and take them all with the Oblivion Sower.
Yeah. We have Prophet of Distortion. It's a single blue, and then you can pay 3 generic and a colorless to draw a card. Reality Smasher, 4 and a colorless. It has trample and haste, and then when it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell unless its controller discards a card. A little protection there for itself. We have Solemn Simulacrum. Everybody knows what that does. Tajuru Preserver, 1 and a green for an elf shaman. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents, so a little anti-grave pact.
Wonder if that's a meta call. If you see a lot of the edict type things, that's a logical one. I think if you don't run that. So I feel like this is being ran for maybe meta considerations, or just maybe that's a huge weakness he just needs to shore up.
And he did mention that in the notes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
We have Thought Harvester, 3 and a blue for a 2/4 flyer Eldrazi, and whenever you cast a colorless spell, target opponent exiles the top card of his or her library.
I win the game with Ancestral Statue and this card.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Yep.
We have Thought Not Seer. 3 and a colorless. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. And then when Thought-Knot Seer leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. So they get that card back, but you can go infinite with this as well. Trophy Mage should just go get those artifacts. We have Ugin's Conjurant. It has X. It enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. And then if damage would be dealt to it, while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters. We have Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger, so the new Ulamog. We have the old Ulamog, Infinite Gyre. We have Warden of Geometries. That's 4 generic mana for an Eldrazi drone with Vigilance, and you can tap to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. And last but not least, World Breaker. 6 and a green. Whenever you cast it, exile target artifact, enchantment, or land, and it has reach. And then you can pay 2 and a colorless to sacrifice a land to return World Breaker from your graveyard to your hand.
Phew. It's a lot of bodies.
A lot of bodies, a lot of scary Eldrazi.
So if he's looking to dip outside of Eldrazi, there's a few other things that he could run with that can do bounce loops, things like Mana War, just 2 and a blue. When Mana War enters the battlefield, return target creature that's on his hand. If you can return Mana War, you unfortunately need to have blue mana to do that multiple times because it's 2 and a blue. But there are ways like Cloud of Fairies to make the extra mana there. So I'm not sure because it requires a few hoops to jump through. I'm not necessarily sure if things like that are worth it, but it might still be. This is the kind of deck where you don't need to necessarily loop something a bunch of times. If you just do it a couple times, that might be enough.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're just trying to get counters onto Animar, then play the other giant stuff for free. So that might get you there. Anything else from creatures that you guys have that you thought about?
I think the new Emrakul would be fine in this deck.
Yeah.
The Promised End.
The Promised End. It's either going to be cheap off of Animar, or it's going to be cheap off of its own ability from the
Delirium.
Delirium.
Yeah.
And then taking over an opponent's turn is fun.
Yes, the granted they do
Not
get
for
another
them,
turn
but
after
yes.
that. I mean, they do get another turn right,
Right,
away
that's
after
true.
that.
Yeah.
So,
That's why you have them kill themselves on their turn.
or try to.
There you go.
Or make the attempt at least.
Usually, what you do is you have all these big fatties, and you're just like, and I attack you, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll go into blocks now, and I'll block here, 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 and here. And
Yeah, this is a pretty tuned list in terms of creatures. I don't know if there's that much that you can change really, or that I would want to. Based on what this deck is doing, the pieces are for the most part here among creatures.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing, yes, it's not an Eldrazi, but like a Hangerback Walker or a Walking Bliss or something to pump that mana into. Yes, Ugin's Conjurance there, but I don't think it's that great personally.
Yeah.
If I were going to do an X something, I want something that's going to really pay off because, I mean, Walking Bliss, you start shooting them all off and you're like, oh, and now I play my Cloud of Fairies and I bounce it with Equilibrium and then I cast it again for 30. And,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, Hangerback is really the same thing. You're just going to be making Thopters every time it dies. Is that a dies or a leave the battlefield?
Dies.
Dang.
Yep, because if it gets passed, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think. Pretty sure it doesn't happen if it gets passed.
I think you're correct.
When it dies.
Yep.
Boo.
Boo.
One card that he's got here in the sideboard that I would for sure run is Chandra's Ignition.
Yeah.
In an Animar deck, you just kill the table sometimes with that card. Even if you're not going infinite, there's enough times when you've just like, I've put 22 counters in Animar. Oh, I top deck Chandra's Ignition. I'm just going to win right now. If no one has a counter spell.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Any more ones here that you guys, any more other cards that you want to shout out?
I mean, he has Crystal Shard in his maybe board.
Mm-hmm.
That's another bounce that probably should be in this deck.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's one more. It's tougher to go infinite with, I believe.
It is, but it's another backup plan.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, worst case, redundancy is good.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And you have enough cost reducers for colorless stuff where that 3 mana probably will never cost 3 mana.
There's also, if you were wanting to go that route, since there seems to be a lot of creature loop stuff here too, Perforos and Impact Tremors are just one more way to turn that into a win.
Yep.
If you're doing infinite bounces with either of those two things out, you kill the table.
Yeah. Otherwise, this is a tight deck. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense. He plays in a random
Yeah.
metas, and you got to be prepared.
And when you're limiting yourself down to Eldrazi like this too, not only is it a tight deck, there's not a ton of other choices. These are all the Eldrazi I think I would want to run. Yeah, even something like Decimator of Provinces. It's an Eldrazi as well. Fits the
Theme.
mold of what you're doing. And again, you can play it, and even if you can't go infinite, if you just happen to have enough counters on Animar that you can play it, there's times it's just going to probably win you the game.
Yeah, giving your entire board +2/+2 and trample, and itself has trample and haste. So
That's one of the things I've really noticed. That's probably the most effective thing about my Veil of the Nightclad deck, and it's not probably this powerful, but the most effective thing about it is there's lots of different ways to win, and you can't just stuff them. If you're reliant too much on combat damage, it's easy to find yourself in a position where, like, that person who has constant mists out, or the person who's able to leave a Glacial Chasm out for 5 turns, can shut off your deck. In this case, there's multiple different ways to get there, and I think spreading that love around, I think Decimator of Provinces gives you the combat damage option in addition to, like, the Impact Tremors triggers, or in addition to the make a giant Animar and dome somebody, or the ETB loops to take care of all their permanents. It's just one more diversified win condition.
yeah,
And it fits with what the deck is trying to do anyway. So, any more from you guys before we wrap this up?
I don't have anything else. I think this deck is really cool. It's not your typical Animar deck that you see. It's not morphs. It is big, fat creatures attacking, but I like to play that type of Magic.
Yeah. Chris, is this the Eldrazi deck for you? You've been wanting one.
Not quite.
You don't want to do. Well, I think also Animar does absolutely bring. It paints a bullseye right on your forehead.
As soon as it's flipped,
Yeah.
as soon as everyone sees what you're playing.
Well, Eldrazi tend to do that as well. So when you're combining those two, I think you have to be playing this kind of deck in a meta where everyone's bringing their shotguns,
Yep.
because then it's much less scary when everyone's, when you're lining up across from the Narset and from the, Grand Arbiter and.
Yeah.
I'm not even thinking of that.
Don't name any of my decks, that's fine.
Zur, the Enchanter, or whatever, where like every one of those decks is loaded for bear, and you have to have a way to. It becomes less of a big deal when you're playing Animar when everyone has that commander that puts a bullseye on them as well.
Yeah.
So that makes sense in terms of what the meta here is. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that deck with us, Glenn, and for supporting the podcast on Patreon. We really appreciate it. It's a big deal. Like, I don't know, when we started doing a Patreon, we're like, oh, we'll get my mom and
Yeah.
and like my wife will give us some money and a few friends, and it would at least maybe pay for pants for Max. But we've been able to get nice mics, and we've been able to get a camera to start doing video, and we're going to be able to move into some of these things because like listeners like our show enough to support us. That's insane.
Yeah, that's super huge, and we are very, very grateful to everybody who can support us that way.
We're absolutely grateful. And we're grateful to listeners who can't,
Yes.
just for listening to it's all just been pretty spectacular so far. So
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show is edited by Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDR_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We'll be back next Monday with a new show with listener Dan Krause. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.